This is something that's actually bothering me a lot. I feel like a lot of times, do you feel like this? Do you feel like you kind of have figured out these people and their motivations? And when something happens, you generally know why or suspect you know why. I'm like that. We're political people, you and me. We watch this stuff for a living. But I can't for the life of me figure out why Nikki Haley is still running for president. It's over. It's been over. Trump's going to be the nominee. Everyone gets that now. But Nikki Haley is still there. She won't leave. So either she's trying to be Trump's VP or there's some angle there I can't see. Either way, I woke up yesterday and there was an announcement that Nikki Haley would be doing, some impromptu press conference. And everyone immediately thinks, okay, well, here we go. She's finally going to drop out of the race. And then Nikki Haley gets up at the press conference and does this.
Some of you, perhaps a few of you in the media, came here today to see if I'm dropping out of the race. Well, I'm not.
So why the special announcement? Oh, here's why. Nikki Haley decided she would do what many politicians in both parties do in this feminized America. She would go for the sympathy vote.
I wish Michael was here today. And I wish our children and I could see him tonight, but we can't. He's serving on the other side of the world, where conflict is the norm, where terrorists hide among the innocent, where Iran's terrorist proxies are now attacking American troops.
So let me see if I understand this right. She called a press conference just for attention. And once she got the attention, she used a cheap stunt to get the attention. And once she got the attention, she cried, trying to emotionally blackmail you into supporting her. That's the most woman running for president thing in the history of women running for president. And I'll tell you one thing right now, her crying like that in public is totally disqualifying, completely disqualifying. Oh, but Jesse, she missed her husband. One, maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. I don't even care whether or not that's true. You can't cry and be the commander-in-chief like that. I miss him so much. No. And let me tell you something, kids. I know that in this nice, touchy-feely world, you're not supposed to talk like this anymore. Don't cry at work either. Men, women, talking to all of you. I can't do my TPS reports because my puppy's sick. Then go home and cry about your puppy. Here at work, we go to work, all right? No more crying at work. No more crying in politics. No more emotional blackmail. Your tears don't move me even that much. Totally disqualifying. If I knew nothing else about Nikki Haley, that alone would have cost her my vote, all right? The criminals are the authority, and I can't drive this home enough that is how people exist in many, many, many places around the world. And as Americans, we are so spoiled to just look at that stuff on television, right? We've always just gotten to look at that stuff and thought to ourselves, wow, that would suck. Imagine a place where the cops work for the gangs. Well, it's coming. It's practically here, but it's coming. And maybe you think I'm being over the top, just stay with me. There's a video out from New York City. We're gonna play it a few different times, but what you're going to see in this video, the illegals are pouring into New York. You should understand this. We've talked about it before on the show. I have many sources in Border Patrol, NYPD, and otherwise that confirm this to be the case. There's all kinds of articles written about it now. Illegals pouring into the country means there are gangs, criminal gangs, pouring into the country. And I don't mean one or two gang members. I'm talking sophisticated gangs, entire gangs crossing the border, coming into various American cities. And they're now doing what they have specialized in the countries they came from. There's stories out there, Venezuelan gangs, El Salvador, you name it. Entire sophisticated gangs coming into the cities. Now that alone is bad enough. If a city like New York was like it was in 1990, it would still be bad to import entire gangs into the city. Now, the city would probably be able to get it under control. You had a mayor that backed the cops, and they'd get things cleaned up, and the judges would actually put criminals away, and the DA would charge them. They might be able to get things under control, but it would still be really, really, really bad to just import an entire organized criminal element. But what's happened now, it's the perfect storm of horror, and you're starting to get a little preview of what it looks like when the authorities in a city in America are no longer the authority. So I'm gonna I'll just let it play first and foremost. A bunch of NYPD cops have to go into one of these shelters where we stuff all these illegals. Instead of turning them away at the border, deporting anybody, we just bring them all in, stuff them in these shelters, and the cops had to go in there and make an arrest. I want you to watch this video, and as you watch this video, we'll go through it a couple times, just on a 30,000-foot view, for your first time watching it. Who is the authority in this video? Hard to watch, isn't it? It is. It's very hard to watch. And there's so much to take away from this video. First, this is what happens when your nation allows barbarian hordes by the million to flood into your country. All over the world. You name it. Syria, China, everywhere in South America, Central America, Mexico. The communists who run the United States of America opened up the country, and now we have millions of illegals here, many of them violent, gang members. But setting aside the violence and the gang members, these people, because of the patheticness of the leadership from the federal level, at the state level, at the city level, they believe they are in charge. They believe they run things. And here's one of the things that hit me most. The NYPD has been gutted and is being gutted. I've warned about this endlessly, and now the time is here. You see, NYPD has been full of wonderful cops. But you tell cops they can't arrest bad guys, they can't hurt someone. If they accidentally hurt someone, they go to prison for life. You tell cops that guy you just arrested, we're not even gonna charge him bail money, we're just gonna let him right out of jail for him to rape and murder again. What happens is the good cops retire. The good cops leave. And the NYPD has so many cops retiring, they're forcing them to schedule their retirement. Well, that's bad enough because those cops go become cops somewhere else, or they go into the private sector. That's bad enough, but maybe worse is the cops have to be replaced. You need so many cops in uniform in NYPD. And what do you get? Well, you have to lower the standards to find anyone who's a turd who wants to be a cop in New York City. So you end up with dumb cops, bad cops, corrupt cops, useless cops. Look at this woman cop. I want you to look at this. This is an NYPD police officer. Look at this woman. Sit back and look at it. Producer, please put it on the screen. Look at this woman. Can you believe that? That's an NYPD police officer. Imagine you're being chased by a murderer with a machete. And you get on the phone, hey, please, it's the 911 help. And that is who shows up in a cop car to save you. And look, I don't want you to think I'm just picking on her. She looks like she should be working TSA, hat hanging off, swinging the baton around. I don't even want you to just look at her. What about the other cops who can't even cuff the suspect? You got 19 cops in there, one illegal they're trying to put cuffs on for God knows what, and they can't even cuff the guy. Why can't they cuff the guy? Are they bad cops? Maybe. Is it because they know if they accidentally sprain his wrist or twist a pinky, they'll be sent to prison? Maybe. But either way, it doesn't really, the why is not even that important. The point is that America's cities, because of DAs who won't charge criminals, because of an open border, America's cities are slowly but surely being taken over by the criminals. And that seems so insane, doesn't it? That's something that happens somewhere else. That's something that happens in Mexico somewhere. But it's not. That's something that now happens in the United States of America. And look, I know you've been shouting about this forever. I've been warning about it for years. This was me back in 2021 with Sean. A concern I've had, and please tell me if I'm wrong on this, is that who you're going to lose are the best officers, the smart, talented people, because smart, talented people have options. They don't have to get dragged through the mud every day, and you're going to be stuck with a bunch of big city police departments that are full of turds, either inexperienced rookies or losers who can't do anything else, and then you are going to have a corrupt, bad police department because all the talent left.
It's happening across the country. Whereas at one time, you're taking that top 5% of applicants are going to be the guys that get into a police academy just to fill vacancies. Now it's dropping down in that 30 and 40%. And so, like you said, you're going to have people that I wouldn't necessarily say shouldn't be in the profession, but they're not the most qualified that are getting in.
And here we are. Millions of illegals, cops not qualified to be there, DAs who won't prosecute criminals, and our cities are burning. And maybe you're sitting there saying right now, Jesse, I don't care, screw the cities. Jesse, I'm glad to be in the country. That's a very common thing to say on the right, and I'm not judging you for that. But I will say this. Cities are part of our country. I personally love them, so I admit that. I love New York City, right? I have a personal affinity for it, but cities are not only part of our country, they're what goes on the billboard of your country. They don't have my little neighborhood on billboards in Tokyo telling people to come to America. What do they have? Empire State Building, Statue of Liberty, come see New York City. Having your cities be violent, drug-addled, criminal-run cesspools is bad for the entire country. It is shocking how bad it's gotten and how fast it's gotten. And you have these lame Democrats now with these half-hearted calls, Eric Adams. Well, I mean, we need to get him out of the city.
And the federal government has a job to determine if a person is here as a migrant or asylum seeker, should determine if they're found guilty and they do their time, they should be deported. You should not be allowed to walk the streets of the city of New York if you are committing any form of criminal behavior that's impacting the quality of life of New Yorkers.
It's too late. It's too late. You're a Democrat, Eric Adams. You support this. You can get up and give all the speeches you want. This is what you support. If you're a Democrat voter, you support this. You voted for this. You see Boston? State pays $16 for breakfast for illegals, $17 for lunch, and $31 for dinner. Where are these people going, Red Lobster? $31 for dinner. The citizens in Boston, though, guys, listen, this is great news. They've had enough and they're mad about it.
It's okay to help, but I don't think that's the place to do it because kids and family go and enjoy.
As a community, voicing our opinion and our concerns for the youth center and the elderly programs going down there, and it just seemed like our voices weren't heard.
We wanted to give a clear message that you're taking away resources from not only from Boston, but Massachusetts for illegal immigrants who pay nothing into our taxes.
We care about our immigrants, brothers and sisters, right? But it has to be a fair balance. How can you tell people that was down at Mass and at Mass Ave for over 10 years, there was no money for them, and now you found money?
I do want to correct that gentleman, though, just with all due respect. He said, I feel like our voices aren't heard. No, you don't understand. Your voices were heard. They heard you loud and clear. The people of Boston, of New York, Chicago, LA, Oakland, you name it, the Democrats in power heard your voice when you went and voted Democrat every time, because that's what I've always done. That's what Mom did. And Democrats have heard your voice. They understand you are too weak and stupid to ever go out and vote for change. And so you voted for this and you enjoy it. The sad part is we all have to sit back and watch America burn because of your rampant stupidity. Imagine for a moment the feeling of obligation you would have if you took over the helm as president of the United States of America. You would feel such an obligation to your country, right? To show up, to be there 39% of the time. Remember Afghanistan? Remember the Afghanistan withdrawal? A lot of people forget this about the Afghanistan withdrawal. A lot of people remember the withdrawal, but they forget that while Afghanistan was falling apart, Joe Biden was on vacation, then Press Secretary Jen Psaki was on vacation, Secretary of State Antony Blinken was on vacation, while we yanked out of Afghanistan and people were falling from planes, splattering onto runways. All the leadership of the United States of America just heading to the beach. Oh, is Afghanistan going bad? Man, that sucks. Pass the SPF 30. These people have no remorse about what they've done to the country. They feel no obligation to the country. Speaking of Afghanistan, there's a new book out. And people like you, people like me, we're very upset that there's been no accountability for what happened in Afghanistan. Think about how insane it is to have something that bad, that embarrassing, cost of lives, and no one resigned. No one in the government, no one in the military, nobody resigned. Well, this is from the new book, quote, no one offered to resign in large part because the president didn't believe anyone had made a mistake. Ending the war was always going to be messy. 13 of our warriors got blown up by a suicide bomber because they were guarding a civilian airport instead of on a secured airbase. That's why those people died. You know that, right? Our troops died because we had them standing out in front of an airport, just terrorist bait. And Joe Biden and the people in the White House looked at that and said, well, cost of doing business. No feeling of duty, of obligation to their country at all. We killed 10 innocent people in response to that suicide bombing. You remember that? 6 of those people were children. We sent a Reaper drone after 10 innocent people and blew them up, and nobody even got reprimanded for it. 10 innocent people gone. And no one in the White House, nobody, no one in the military, no one looked around and thought, man, that's on me. You know what, I'm going to resign. No feeling of duty, no feeling of obligation. Look, let's just get right down to it. No patriotism. I talk about it all the time. It's really what it comes down to. Patriotism It's not a hokey thing. It's not some eye-rolling cliche thing. It is the essential element for a nation, a love of country. Because without it, if you don't have that, if your military leaders don't have it, if your citizens don't have it, if your president doesn't have it, you're finished, because they will never make decisions for the best of the country. Why would you do that if you don't love the place? This is where we're at now. And that brings me to this. Speaking of the military, just really quickly, understand that proxy wars are proxy wars for a reason. The Soviets were helping the North Vietnamese army in Vietnam. We knew it, they knew it, yet the Soviets went to painstaking lengths to keep it quiet and not advertise it. We decided to do it back to them in Afghanistan when the Soviets invaded Afghanistan, sending in weapons, all kinds of things. And we went to painstaking lengths to keep it quiet. Why? Well, you're fighting a proxy war so you don't have to fight a real war between two big boy powers, millions of people dying. And that has always been understood. That's why you fight a proxy war. Well, I should say that has always been understood until now. Now that the United States of America is run by a bunch of children, Republican and Democrat, who don't seem to understand at all how the world works, we now have politician after politician after politician getting ready to get us in a hot war with a power that has the most nuclear weapons on the planet. Please stop going on television and bragging about how many Russians American munitions have killed.
If we don't aid Ukraine, Putin will walk all over Ukraine. We will lose the war, and we could be fighting in Eastern Europe in a NATO ally in a few years. Americans won't like that.
We are going to be fighting in Eastern Europe because you keep talking about how much we're helping Ukraine. We've shifted the Overton window so badly that people accept this as normal. Shut up about what we're doing, please. George Washington defeated the most powerful military in the world. My goodness. What techniques did he use? What kind of a tactician must he have been? Tell me, Jesse, what did he do? Well, you want to know? The thing George Washington was best at as a general, and in fact, he was so good at this, that war colleges around the planet, not just here in America, around the world, to this day, study this part of George Washington. Do you want to know what it was? What his specialty was? Retreat. Tactical retreat is what it's known as. I'm not making that up. You see, when we picture generals, we always picture the hard charger, kill them all, let God sort them out, sort of a thing. Well, I'm going to do this and do that, and I'll move here, and we'll wipe them out. But the truth is, reality doesn't look like Hollywood movies. Reality sometimes says, hey, I have to get my troops out of danger here, or they will all be wiped out. I can't replace them. If they're all wiped out, I lose the war. Therefore, I'm going to choose my battle. I'm going to choose my battlefield. And when I'm in a place that I can't win, where I can't win no matter what I do, I will remove myself and my men from that area so we can get to an area we can defend. I will fight at a day and time of my choosing, at a location of my choosing, giving me the advantage. And you should know that this is something many generals struggle with. It's why they teach about George Washington at these war colleges. It's hard when you're a general, you have all these men, all this equipment. You're a hard charger, you want the right thing. How do you tell them, back away, gentlemen? This is one we can't win today. That brings me to New York. Brings me to the latest and worst on what's happening in communist America. Everyone knows about the lawfare taking place against Donald Trump right now. Whether you're the biggest Trump fan in the world or whether you hate his freaking guts, you should acknowledge it is really, really bad for the country, and it is accelerating us going to a really, really dark place as a nation. As soon as one party decides to declare war on the political opponent legally, it's ugly. It's very, very difficult for a nation to come back from that. So the latest is Donald Trump, this came down last week, $350 million fine in New York. $350 million fine. His son's got fines too, but $350 million fine, and he's banned from doing business in New York for 3 years. Now, I need to clarify something here. You need to set aside your love or your hatred for Donald Trump for what we're about to talk about. This is not a Trump conversation per se. This is a conversation about America as it is and the way America is going to look in the future. Let's sit and think about this. A prominent Republican, Donald Trump, just got financially destroyed in New York. And in case you're wondering about the nuts and bolts of the case, it was completely absurd, a ridiculous judgment. And not only did he get destroyed, he got destroyed financially by New York's AG. New York's AG, Letitia James, she ran for office promising she would use her office to destroy her political opponent. Here she was.
As the next Attorney General, I see the law as a sword and as a shield to protect those who are vulnerable, because no one is above the law, including this illegitimate president. And so, I look forward to going into the office of Attorney General every day, suing him, defending your rights, and then going home.
That speech alone is devastating for the United States of America and jaw-dropping. The AG of a state or a nation, the AG of, the making about the state, New York, she is officially the top law enforcement official in the state of New York. And she got in front of the people repeatedly and told them, if you elect me, I will take my official state position and I will use it to wage a political war against the Republican we hate. Just that speech is stunning. Something you really would never have heard previously in the United States of America. Definitely prior to Obama, you would have never heard a speech like that. But she gave the speech, and credit to her. I want to make sure I give the communists credit where credit is due. Unlike Republicans, she got elected and actually did what she promised. You see, that's the difference. Communists will run for office and they'll promise all these things. Drain the swamp, lock her up. And they'll actually do them. Republicans promise these things and then promptly wuss out the second they take office. So she takes office, she destroys Donald Trump. But set Trump aside again and think about this. If you're a Republican real estate investor in New York, what are you thinking right now? I'll tell you what you should be thinking right now. And it's funny, even the Democrats in New York are worried about this. If you're a Republican real estate investor in New York, you're probably looking around saying, am I next? Will they do that to me? If they can do that to him, the billionaire former president, what would stop Letitia James, Kathy Hochul, Alvin Bragg, this judge, whatever, what would stop them from doing that to me? The answer is nothing, nothing. And that leads me to the tactical retreat thing. I know this is a hard conversation to have every time we have it. And I understand for many people, maybe you, it's not possible. But if you are in a blue state, you need to get out. You need to tactically retreat to an area where you and your family and your business can be safe, an area where you can defend, an area where you can still be free. What happened to Donald Trump in New York is not a one-off. Communists don't do one-offs. That's not how it works. What happened to Donald Trump is simply a preview of what is to come. They are looking around, these communists in these blue states where they control everything top to bottom. You go to a blue state like New York, you have it all, right? You have every single level of power, and the communists have all these new powers, and they're using all these new powers in ways they've never used them before. They've always wanted to, but they've never used their powers this way. And I'll tell you something. They're enjoying it a lot. When Donald Trump got financially destroyed in New York, Letitia James didn't have a moment of self-reflection on what this means for America. She wasn't torn up about it. I guarantee you, cross my heart and hope to die, Letitia James, she had a party. Even if it wasn't a physical party, which I bet you it was, she had a party. It was champagne that night, baby. They're trying these new powers and they're enjoying them. And they're going to keep doing this to Republicans, top and bottom. If you're a Republican living, doing business, going to school in a blue state, you need to get out. And look, I will actually credit Kathy Hochul, not for many things. I despise New York Governor Kathy Hochul, but in the very least, Kathy Hochul woke up and realized how this looks to the other Republican real estate investors. And she realized many of them are probably going to follow the Jesse Kelly plan, and they're going to get out.
I know many of the business people in New York City, and by and large, they are honest people. And they're not trying to hide their assets, and they're following the rules. And so this judge determined that Donald Trump did not follow the rules. He was prosecuted, and truly the governor of the state of New York does not have a say in the size of a fine. I think that this is really an extraordinarily unusual circumstance that the law-abiding and rule-following New Yorkers who are business people have nothing to worry about because they're very different than Donald Trump and his behavior.
Did you hear it? You heard it, didn't you? Now listen, this is an extraordinary circumstance. I mean, you follow the law. This is extraordinary. It was just Donald Trump. I promise it was just Donald Trump, but it's not just Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the appetizer. So many people on the right view him as the final goal of the communists. Take out Trump and then the communists will not back off, but at least that's it for him. Donald Trump is the appetizer. You are the entree. This is a preview. Everything that is happening to Donald Trump, especially in blue states, is a preview of what the United States of America is going to look like in the coming years. So get out before the music stops and get to a place, a state, county, city, where you have some level of state protection so what happened to him cannot happen to you. Joe Biden is really old. And look, I don't say that to be insulting to anybody. I don't even really say it to be insulting to Joe Biden, although I'm more than happy to insult Joe Biden. The point is that the body, the mind, these bodies God gave us, they don't last forever. The mind doesn't last forever. And at some point in time, you get too old to do certain things. Look, even me, I'm 42. I'm still active. I'm still fine, but I can't do everything I used to do when I was 20. But when I was 20, we used to pull all-nighters in the Marines and then wake up the next day and throw on 80 pounds and go for a 10-mile hump. If I did that today, I'd die. Joe Biden is not only old, his mind is melting, and he can't be president of the United States anymore. He just can't. This is not something we can, look, we can't have this anymore.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping. The beer brewed here, it is used to make the brew beer in this refinery. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lakes. I wonder why it's called.
We'll teach Donald Trump a valuable lesson. Don't mess with the women in America unless you want to get the benefit.
And look, it's not like I just broke news there. You already know that. But the special counsel report that came out recently from Robert Hur was one of the more eye-popping things I've ever seen. The special counsel, he was investigating Joe Biden for his various crimes, and he said when he was done, hey, yeah, Joe Biden, yeah, I mean, he committed all these crimes and it was bad. He said it, it's all in the report, but we're not going to charge him. Why? Because he's too old and broken down. He's so old and broken down that he's not mentally competent to stand trial. Now, I need to explain something that you already know, but I'm saying this more for my own purposes than you. The commander-in-chief, if a war breaks out, setting aside his peacetime duties, if a war breaks out, America's generals and admirals will receive marching orders from Joe Biden. That is a really, really big deal. And he's not mentally competent enough to stand trial. And then in response to this report when it came out, of course, Joe Biden, because he's Joe Biden, made everything worse, had an impromptu press conference. He just started yelling at everybody.
For months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, watch me. Many American people have been watching and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press. Not share classified information. I did not share it.
With your ghostwriter?
With my ghostwriter, I did not. Guarantee you did not.
But the special counsel said in the report that
he did not say that.
Okay.
He did not say that.
But Mr. President,
let me answer your question.
And that leads me to this. I've been telling you for a very, very, very long time, I've been predicting, I guess I should say, I guess we'll see if I'm right. I've been predicting that there's no way the system is going to let this guy be president. I think the powers that be are tired of Joe Biden, frustrated with him, and I think this entire thing is a coordinated effort to get Joe Biden to resign. They're going to get Joe Biden to resign. I'm laying down the marker once again. I've laid it down a million times. And they're not going to get Joe Biden to resign for the same reasons you or I would want Joe Biden to resign. You would want Joe Biden to resign because he's a crappy president. He opened up the border. Inflation's out of control. Or just the basics of he's not a fully functional adult. That's why you would want Joe Biden to resign. I don't think the system would ever care about any of those things. The system is going to force Joe Biden, maybe not to resign, but to not run again. They're going to force him to not run again because the system only has one purpose. You and I have talked about this a million times. What is that purpose? The system's only job is to protect itself. The only job the system has is to protect the system itself. Joe Biden being so old and embarrassing and bad risks the system losing the presidency, which they treasure above all. They're not going to risk that for Joe or anybody. They're going to lean on him until he topples over. And as we've all seen, that won't take very much leaning. Joe Biden's brother, Jim, he had a closed door, that's why you haven't seen any video of it, a closed door meeting today with the House. He's there answering some questions. This is all part of the Joe Biden impeachment inquiry. Remember, as you know, Joe Biden has not been impeached. This is an impeachment inquiry. This essentially allows them to ask more people more questions. So they bring in his brother Jim, and they're asking Joe Biden, or Jim Biden, some questions about him, Joe, his business. And along those lines, what are the things they were talking about today? Well, this is actually interesting. It's not interesting because the story in and of itself is interesting. It's interesting because it's a wonderful preview of how things are done, how corruption, bribery, scandal, how it's done at a federal level, at a DC level. You see, when we think of political corruption, corrupt politicians, I don't know what you picture. Here's what I picture. An envelope full of cash, right? Two guys sitting down, sipping on a beer somewhere, and one guy slides the other guy a briefcase under the table full of cash. That's what we think about. More Bob Menendez type, gold bars in his house. But the truth is, that kind of corruption, envelopes full of cash, is very common at the local level. Your big city, your small town, wherever you're watching me from, that's where that stuff happens. At the federal level, because of all the oversight and documentation, it actually doesn't happen that way. But it does happen in a different way. You see, the people who run this country, Democrat and Republican, they look at the Treasury of America as being this gigantic piggy bank, and they want to make withdrawals for themselves, of course. They're never for the good of the country. They never think about you. They never think about me. Always for themselves. But how do you dip your hands in there? Well, here's a great example. Joe Biden and Jim Biden started up a little hospital chain, you see? The hospital chain ended up going belly up, of course. Of course it did. But not before Joe and Jim ended up doing pretty well from the whole thing. This is a Biden family special, but I don't actually want to just criticize the Bidens because this is how it is done at the federal level. Remember Joe Biden's cancer research charity? Remember that? Joe Biden started a cancer research charity. We learned a little bit about this before the election. Raised millions of dollars for it. Nobody can locate anything that they did when it comes to cancer research. It was almost just an empty office building. Now, granted, they had staffers in this charity, this nonprofit, and those staffers made a pretty generous income. But cancer, oh, they didn't dig into any of that. Again, America is just, to all these people, it's just a big pot of gold, and they're just trying to figure out how to dip their hands into it. So that's what happened today, and that's what's going on in the government. Now, what's going to come of this, Joe Biden getting impeached? Well, the Hunter Biden stuff is still to come, and the Joe Biden stuff is going to come after that, if it comes at all. And Joe Biden is probably not going to get impeached. And it was interesting today to watch James Comer talk about the reason Joe Biden probably won't be impeached.
Kentucky Congressman James Comer tells Spectrum News the math keeps getting worse for Republicans, whose narrow majority in the House got even tighter after losing a New York seat.
I think the conference will get to see what happens with this Mayorkas impeachment in the Senate and how serious the Senate treats that as to whether or not we impeach Joe Biden over here or we just focus on holding him accountable.
So the numbers aren't there. He's not as confident that the numbers are there. And this is the guy kind of spearheading all this. And that is interesting. The numbers aren't there. What numbers? Well, the number of Republicans in the House. James Comer saying we don't have enough Republicans in the House to impeach. That's interesting. Hang on a second. Let me grab a document here. Sorry, this is a list. This is a list of Republicans in the House who voted to expel George Santos. George Santos, who was convicted of no crimes, none whatsoever. But anyway, James Comer's worried that he doesn't have the numbers. I just want to look at this list really quickly of people who voted to have George Santos expelled. And man, that is so weird. There's a name on this list, James Comer. So James Comer, just recently, voted to kick out a Republican who was convicted of no crimes whatsoever. In fact, even the alleged crimes he committed were committed before he got to the House. So James Comer just reduced the GOP's majority in the House. We, of course, lost that special election. Now a Democrat holds it. And now James Comer's telling you we can't impeach Joe Biden because we don't have the numbers. Is that not the most GOP thing in the history of GOP things? And that brings us to the impeachment that we've already had, the impeachment of Mayorkas. Remember, they impeached them in the House. The actual trial is in the Senate. Alejandro Mayorkas has already been impeached. Impeachment is done, remember, but impeachment is not removal. What it does is it moves this whole thing to the Senate where they have a trial. Except, you see, communists don't do things like the low-T loser GOP does. You know what I was thinking about this morning? I'm not getting sidetracked, just stay with me. You know what I was thinking about this morning? I was thinking about the moments in the last 5-10 years where they were critical moments and we failed, or someone failed. You know, we could have zigged and we zagged. Should have zigged and we zagged. I think a lot about those moments, and one of those moments was Donald Trump gets elected president. He appoints Jeff Sessions as his AG, the country's AG. And immediately, Democrats and the system, they launch a heavy propaganda campaign that Donald Trump is a Russian asset. There was Russian collusion, Russia. You remember all this stuff. And Jeff Sessions, in facing all that propaganda, instead of saying, no, there wasn't Russian collusion. In fact, as AG, I am announcing today that I'm launching an investigation into the FBI, into the CIA, into every organization that promoted a phony Russian collusion story. Instead of doing that, Jeff Sessions did the right thing. Remember it? And he recused himself from the investigation. Well, I mean, it wouldn't be right for me to get involved. After all, I'm an officer and a gentleman. And then we remember Democrats spent the first 2 years of Donald Trump's presidency, the Mueller investigation, kneecapping his entire agenda. Which brings me to where we are now. That's how Republicans do it, doing the right thing. Of course, to destroy themselves, their agenda, and the things you care about, but it's the right thing, obviously. The communists don't play those games. The communists intend to win. It's what I admire a lot about them. If they weren't such demonic, evil, murderous pieces of trash, I would become one. They do want to win, though. You see, this impeachment trial is going to happen in the Senate, right? After all, that would be the right thing. That's what they're going to do. Except Senator Ron Johnson's not so confident. Are we in store for any surprises? Is he actually going to get kicked out?
I can't imagine that. I doubt there'll even be a trial. I don't know all the rules around impeachment. I don't know to what extent the Democrats may be able to just call this up as a question, table the impeachment, and just move on. This may be a one quick vote and over. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, they're tabling impeachment. At least that's the rumor today, is that Democrats' trial. Do you think we're going to do the right thing and allow you to take our guy, Mayorkas, and embarrass him nationally, interrogate him, put him on trial? Because it's the right thing? They laugh about things like that. Of course they're not going to go through with this whole thing. Of course they're not. That's a GOP thing. Well, it is the rules, guys. After all, it says here in the Constitution that I have to allow you to destroy me. Of course they're not going to take it up. They play to win. We play to lose the right way.